What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by comic creator Brandon Ingram. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm happy to
Brandon,
be here.
I'm glad you're here. We've been following each other on social media here for a while, and uh, you were on Lamer Frame with me one time, right? On, weren't you?
I've been on Rod's show at least a couple of times,
I
and
thought
yeah, I
so.
think at least one time you were there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one time I was, and but I'm glad we're actually able to connect now on one of my shows. You are a comic writer, and you have a book called Gallows Man that you have created, and I want to talk about that. But I gotta ask, as I always ask all my guests, have you always been a fan of comics? Like, is this kind of something that you got into later, or is this like, no, this has been from day one? You've been a comic fan.
For the most part, it's been like since I was a little kid. Like the two things I remember, like early comic stuff, is going to a yard sale and buying a box of like 70s and 80s comics when I was like 7 or 8 years old. It was just a shoebox full of those comics. Um, some of them probably worth a little bit nowadays, but I had a yard sale a few years later and sold them all for like $1 each. Uh, so that, and then the first comic I remember like buying or like wanting my parents to buy was in the mall. I don't know if you have kids. I don't know if they still do this for kids' clothing, but they'll have a t-shirt or pants or whatever, and then they'll have like a toy with it, or they'll have like at this time a comic book with it. So I got a Spider-Man shirt, and it came with a reprint copy of Ultimate Spider-Man #1. And that was the first comic I remember like buying, kind of.
That's awesome. You get clothes and a comic book. Like
Yeah,
I don't know how I've never heard of this, but it sounds fantastic.
I mostly just got those clothes for the toy or the comic book. The clothes were secondary to me.
That's so great. So, what then transitioned to where you're like, you know what? I think I want to start to get into writing comics and creating comics.
Yeah, so whenever I got into high school, that's whenever I got more serious into like collecting and reading comics. I was actually like looking for specific titles or looking for specific writers or artists and stuff, to read their comics. And it was probably roughly after a couple years after high school, I started writing screenplays and stuff. I would write different screenplays. It started with horror shorts and then went into like horror features, and then it kind of branched out from there. And I kind of challenged myself with something like the Gallows Man of doing a feature that wasn't horror related, because the Gallows Man was originally a 113 page long screenplay. And then a couple years later, after I submitted it to film contests like script contests and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it not getting the best results, um, I saw in some of the notes some things that helped me. And so I took that, and I was working on some horror comics at the time, and I was like, you know what, let me read through my Gallows Man script and just see if I can turn this into a comic, see if I can edit it some to turn it into a comic script. And it was fairly easy because there was a lot of editing that needed doing, but I was going through, I was like, where can each issue end? Like, you need a decent ending of each issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just reading through it, and there was barely any editing when it came to like, oh, I got to figure out how to end it here. It's just like, I was reading, I was like, oh, that's a good ending. Oh, that's a good ending. Oh, that's a good ending. To where it wound up being what it will be, a 4-issue miniseries. But
Nice. So you were writing screenplays and sending them in, and then you took the note. You said you took some notes and constructive feedback and kind of like, well, why the switch then go from screenwriting to say, why say I want to see if I can make it a comic book?
the ultimate thing for me was the screenplay for the Gallows Man. If you look at the screenplay and are reading the screenplay, it's meant to be like a B movie. It's supposed to be like a low budget B movie, but it plays into that. But even then, I was like, it would still, my vision of it cost like at least $1 million. I was like, there's no way that I could ever raise the funds for that. But then I started thinking about not only the Gallows Man, but some of the other projects I worked on at the time. And I was thinking, like, these things, I want to see them. I want to see the imagery of these things. And I don't have Marvel level of money or anything. I can't make a, like, for some of my horror stuff, I can't do like $20 million for a short film, because some of them, it's like that's probably what it would cost. But with comics, one, it's cheaper, a lot cheaper than movie making. It still costs money. There's still a budget there, but there's that, and then there was also, it can be as expressive as it can be. It can be as artistic as it can be. Whereas, like, not bashing Marvel movies or anything like that, like, there's a limit to how good it can look because of technology. It's just the technology of CGI and different stuff like that. There's still a limit. It'll keep getting better and better, but there's a limit right now. Whereas with art, like, the sky's the limit. The classic saying, it's whatever can be brought to the page. And so that's kind of what pushed me into focusing more on comic writing.
Nice. Well, we've kind of tiptoed around the issue a little bit of what your series is called. And so someone's checking out Gallows Man because we're in midst of a Kickstarter for issue number 2. What is this series about?
So the series as a whole, like a good little synopsis, basically, short little synopsis, is it's set in the 1940s. It's set in the 1940s. It's in a satirically over the top and campy world of superheroes. And the Gallows Man, who's the lead superhero in this book, he has a team around him. He has Newsboy, who's his sidekick. It's a little boy in like a guillotine costume, basically. He has basically a billionaire backer for him, making all the, or making and buying all the gear for him. And the billionaire has a butler who helps them as well. That team, the Gallows Man and his team, they have to take on this Nazi threat that has infiltrated their city. Not only to save that city, but to avenge the death of the Gallows Man's former mentor. That's the basic premise of the book. And with this Kickstarter is focusing on basically issues 1 and 2.
Okay.
And both issues are double-sized issues. They're not a 22-page issue. They're not a 32-page issue. Of story, it's 48, or with the first issue, it's 49 pages of story. With the second issue, it's 47 pages of story. But I make up with that because there's a 2-page short in the second issue. So 49 pages of story with that, as well as like bonus content within it. So you get a lot of content within these books.
Nice. So where did this idea of Gallows Man kind of come around from?
It kind of came around from it's going to sound weird. I have never really seen, I've seen a couple episodes of the 1960s Batman show. I haven't seen much of it though. Whenever I wrote the Gallows Man, I didn't see any of the Batman show. All I knew was that classic gif or meme with Batman running with the bomb over his head. And I liked the feel of that 1960s Batman show, is the campy, fun cheesiness, and it was purposely that way. Right. That's the thing, is whenever I was younger, there'd be friends that's like, oh, this is lame, this is stupid, or whatever. It's like they purposely wrote it like that. Like, it's not accidental. Like, right. They wrote that humor like that, and it's hilarious. And so I kind of took that, as well as, like, I love movies, and I love Quentin Tarantino's movies. I like a lot of drama and somewhat violent movies. So I was like, take a superhero set in like, let's say 1960s Batman campiness, where we gotta do the big pow or the blam. We can't show contact of fists, basically. No
Right.
violence, no swearing, no blood, nothing like that. It's like, take that, but add the violence. There's no language in the Gallows Man. There's no suggestive themes. It is rated M for mature. The only reason the Gallows Man is rated M for mature is for the violence. Like it has that campiness of everyone being like do 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 and like cracking jokes and different stuff like that. But you do see that violence, and it's over the top violence, and it's almost weird seeing this world of them just like, yeah, it was normal. That guy got his head squished by that thing over there. It's That's kind of how it culminated.
Yeah, I mean, he literally hangs the people. Like,
Yeah.
that's how he kills them. So like,
Oh yeah.
and it just is like, oh, this is normal things that a superhero does.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, it's one of those things. Not I love superhero comics, but I think we've stepped out of it a little bit recently, but past 10 years, like they've had to be super serious, and I'm okay with that. I love serious, thought-provoking, deep comics. There was also a lot of darkness in comics and stuff that's like, let's just have some fun sometimes. Just a fun little romp. It's over the top fun, but it's fun. And if you want to read into it and see if there's any uh, social discussion on violence or whatever, or desensitization to violence, sure, you can do that. Or if you don't care about that, it's just a fun book to read.
Hmm. So how did you get this idea of going, okay, I took my screenplay to now I'm making it a comic. How did you get to where we're at now with already, getting ready to launch issue 2 here?
So basically, start from finding the artist for the book, Helen Bolton. I reached out to her. I had done some horror comic work with her before, which that stuff will come out in the near future. But I'd done some horror comic stuff with her, and I wanted to turn Gallows Man into a comic book. I was trying to find the right artist for it, and she was very adaptive. Like, her art style, it can adapt. She did a short horror story where it was Dr. Seuss art, like that was the art style. And then the next horror thing she did, it was completely different. So I was like, okay, let me just see if she'd be interested in working on this. And sure enough, she was. And I paid her for a couple of sample pages as well as some character concepts. Those came back great, and I was like, okay, do you want to do the book? She said yes, and so it's pretty much been going from there. Found her through DeviantArt
Okay.
back in 2019. And then a year later, I found out you can find artists through simply Instagram or Facebook. DeviantArt is great. You find a lot of great talent there, but you're scouring through pages. I spent dozens of hours on DeviantArt to find different artists for books, whereas with Facebook and Instagram and finding cover artists or artists for comics, I've spent less than 10 hours doing that. But yeah,
Technology.
and then I was going to say, and then I eventually found the main cover artist for the Gallows Man as well as the variant cover artist. I found both of them on Instagram.
Yeah, technology is great, right? Speeding up the process of
Yes.
like, ooh, I'm going to utilize that. And
Oh
so
yeah.
you brought it to Kickstarter. You know, are there tiers that you kind of do when you're doing a Kickstarter? And if people are, haven't gotten into issue 1, can they play catch up? And talk about the Kickstarter a little bit.
Yeah. So with uh, the Kickstarter, whenever you look it up or anything like that, it'll be the Gallows Man issues 1 and 2. So there is a focus on issue 1 if no one has read it yet. But if you've already read issue 1, if you want just issue 2, there's that. But with the tiers, it ranges from $1 to $70. With the $1, you're simply just helping us out with as as much as you can, whatever you feel comfortable doing. And with $1, we'll include your name with our thank you post. Like we'll do a social media thank you post and include your name in that. If you want a digital copy, let's say you've already read issue 1 of the Gallows Man, you're just like, I don't really want a physical copy, but I would like to read issue 2. Issue 2 digital copy is just $5. And then issues 1 and 2, a digital copy, if you haven't read any of it, it's $8 for digital copies of both of those. And then from physical copies, like issue 2 of Gallows Man, it starts at $10, and then it'll just go up from there with different reward tiers and stuff. Like we've got reward tiers for the main cover. Right now I'm looking at issue 1. I haven't printed issue 2 yet, but you'll get the main cover, the variant cover, Gallows Man number 2 sticker set, digital copy of the script, as well as the thank you posts, and then one more thing within there, and that's like, I think, set at $25. There's
Yeah.
roughly 12 to 13 different tiers, and
Okay.
it's whatever is best for you. It helps for those that haven't read any of the Gallows Man, that can get issues 1 and 2. And if you've already read issue 1, there's tons of stuff for you with issue 2 tiers.
Man, that's so cool to, the different tiers where you can just say, hey, this is, I want to get involved with this, or I want to get, at a decent price. Like Kickstarters can be tough sometimes because, man, they can be expensive.
Oh yeah.
But you're getting double issues and stuff like that's.
Oh yeah. Because my main thing, like, I want the Kickstarter to be as successful as it can be, and I hope as many people read this book and back the book. But my main thing is, in terms of paying for the artist, paying for the art, all that stuff, I've saved up over the years to do that. That's covered. So what the Kickstarter really focuses on is being able to print it, to print the book, because it does cost to print books, as well as print some of the different materials like stickers and different stuff like that. It covers that, as well as it helps with potential bonuses for artists, like once the Kickstarter's done. Nice. So really that's the focus of the Kickstarter, is getting it into you guys' hands, like as many of y'all's hands, just printing it and getting it into your hands as quickly as possible, because issues 1 and 2, they're completely done. Like they're ready to be printed, all that stuff. There's no, hey, we got a sketch, the book will be out 2 years from now. No. Issues 1 and 2 completely done. We'll print it. We're currently working on issue 3. We're about a quarter way with the artwork on that. But I will say this, the entire script for the Gallows Man, like I mentioned before, it was a screenplay at first. All of the script of the Gallows Man, it's going to be a 4-issue miniseries. It's completely done. So if you're worried about like, oh, like, will he ever get the story continuing or whatever, it's there. We're just working on getting it out to you. But issues 1 and 2 completely done. You don't have to worry about that.
When the first issue Kickstarter dropped?
May 4th of 2021.
Okay. And so basically it's setting it up almost kind of like a year intervals is what it's seeming so far, at least.
Yeah. That's likely what it'll be. With issues 3 and 4, we might be able to get it out sooner. This is no promise, but there is a good possibility that issue 3 Kickstarter can hit like very beginning of 2023, if not late 2022.
Okay.
So we're closing our time windows a little bit better.
Nice. you're figuring it out a little bit, and that's what's
Yeah.
up. Now I gotta say something. I mean, you were talking about your original idea of this, and being inspired by Batman 66. You said you've only watched like 3 episodes of it now. Like, you're talking to me, and you've only still watched 3 episodes of that. I have failed at my job, then, sir.
Well, here's the thing though, is there's a potential sequel to the Gallows Man. Like, once this miniseries is over, there's a potential sequel to it, as well as a potential anthology series to it of just following Town City, like just stuff going on in Town City, characters within Town City. That's the city within the Gallows Man. There's potential of that, and so it sounds bad, but I don't want to watch too much of that and like pull a bunch from that, because even if I'm not trying to, subconsciously it'll be there, so I'm trying to avoid it as much as I can.
So my job is to just slowly infiltrate it into our discussions then of when they did this in Batman 66 and the giant clam, and you're like, dang it, there goes my villain for the 4th issue.
Like every week someone can send to me in like a DM of like a 1-minute clip, and by 2 years from now I've seen all of the show or whatever.
Yes, that's a one of the tiers on the Kickstarter is make Brandon watch an episode of Batman 66, and
I do really like
and him and I will do a breakdown of it.
I do really like it though. I've seen a couple episodes, and I do really like it. It's one of those things where once I am completely done with the Gallows Man, like this miniseries is over and any potential sequels or anything, once I'm done with that, then I'll finally sit down and binge it.
Good. So you've heard this, gang. And in 2028, when this is all done, we're going to do a podcast where we break down episodes of Batman 66. Well, you said you merged it with Quentin Tarantino. Do you have a favorite Quentin Tarantino movie? It's tough.
It's cycled over the years. Right now, I'd probably currently say Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
That one's always stuck with me. Django Unchained might be my second.
Ooh.
But I think I like Pulp Fiction the most out of them all.
Okay. I had to ask, because you're talking about Quentin Tarantino. It is interesting. I feel like it goes through cycles. Like, go back and watch a movie and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember, like, I forgot how good this was, or like how much I really did like this.
And all of his movies are like really good to like amazing. And even those that like aren't amazing, they're still good. And what I'm getting at with this is like Jackie Brown. It had been a while. I saw it back in high school, and then I watched it again like a year ago. When I watched it again, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so much better than I thought, to where it like creeped up on my Tarantino list. And I was like, it's so hard to choose with them all now.
Right. Oh, for sure. So, well, we've talked about Gallows Man a lot, and it sounds like you're in the thick of it. And you said you worked on some horror stuff. Is there other stuff that you're working on right now in the world of comics, or is your focus just on this, this world that you've created?
Currently right now, the Gallows Man is what I'm focused on, but 99% sure this will happen. I'll likely have a Kickstarter in the fall of 2022 for issues 1 and 2 of Dismay Avenue. It's like my horror anthology series. That Dismay Avenue #1 was the first comic I worked on back in 2019. Like, I've been steadily working on that, holding on to it for a little bit. I wanted to get issue 3, like all of the art done for that before I put these out, so I could get issue 3 out sooner. But yeah, this fall, don't have an official date yet. I'm thinking, I've thought in my head, likely early October, I'll have a Kickstarter out for those 2 anthology series.
Oh, nice. And so is that then, because I know your Instagram handle is Dismay Comics, is that kind of where that came from?
Yeah, I basically ripped off and pulled a Detective Comics. It was the first comic I worked on was Dismay Avenue, because not trying to bash my own Dismay Comics name, but it took me a while to come up with the name Dismay Avenue, because I grew up on like reading Goosebumps and all that stuff, and then like R.L. Stein's lesser known book series Fear Street. And I was like, I've always liked the Fear Street books. Aren't great if you go back to them. I've always liked the name, and the covers were the best part of those books. But I always liked the name Fear Street, and I was like, I kind of want to do something along that line. So I spent hours, as well as consulting with friends about like, hey, what's a good synonym for scared or fear? And so I was just constantly looking through the sources, found Dismay, and then eventually settled on a street word. So Dismay Avenue. And then Dismay Comics, that took like 30 minutes to come up with Dismay Comics. It took a lot longer to come up with that title, Dismay Avenue, than Dismay Comics.
And if you ever want to shorten it, you can just call it DC.
Yeah.
And then Dismay Comics, because that's how we say DC Comics now. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. Well, I kind of hinted at your handle, Instagram handle, but where can people follow along with, all the Kickstarters and stuff that you got going on?
Yeah. So if you've already backed the Kickstarter, or you want to see stuff that I'm working on Facebook and Instagram, you can type in Dismay Comics. That's DISMAY Comics. I have to specify that because sometimes it sounds like I'm saying Disney Comics, but saying it kind of a Southern slang to it. Yeah. Dismay Comics. Don't want to get sued there. Dismay Comics. So yeah, Facebook and Instagram, you can follow along with my comic making journey with my various artists, as well as sometimes I'll do random movie reviews or whatever. You can see that.
Nice.
So if you want to see more dealing with the Gallows Man, see if it's your fancy or not, you can go to the Kickstarter page, but you can also watch this trailer that's right here, right now.
Let's do it!
Ready for the epic tales of Town City superheroes to continue? Me neither, but this trailer is for the second issue of the Gallows Man, so I guess I must go on. Follow the Gallows Man and his team as they struggle to get closer to the Nazi threat that took the life of the Gallows Man's former mentor. Editor's note, go back to issue 1. That was some seriously brutal stuff. I mean, geez Louise, the man's head was squashed like a tomato. Also, it was a flashback. I cannot spoil the past, silly listener. Will the Gallows Man and his team stop the Nazi cult hidden within the town city before it's too late? Find out by backing the second issue of the Gallows Man today over on Kickstarter. A second issue? Now that's surprising. I can't believe they had me reading for this book again. If only I could live out my life by doing voiceover work I yearn for, and say things like, "Your mama's so fat when she sits around the house, she sits around the house. Ooh, ooh. England is my city. Beep, boop, boop, bop, boop, boop, beep. Music peaked with the creation of ska. Poo poo pee pee. If I could say all of those things, only then would I finally reach Nirvana."
Dude, that looks great, Brandon. Thank you for sharing that with us. And well, gang, all the links that Brandon just talked about are in the description of this video, along with the link to the Kickstarter. By the time this video is going to be dropping, or the podcast is, it'll be in the thick of the Kickstarter. So make sure you guys go back it, if check it out, see if it's something that you dig, and if it is, man, go support. That's what the great thing about Kickstarters is. You can find comics that you love and say like, man, is that for me? So I think I really recommend checking it out and see what you guys think, because this has been a lot of fun getting to talk to you about this world that you've created.
Yeah, I love talking comics, whether it's my comics or just comics in general. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thanks for hopping on the show, and gang, click on the links below. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.